What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome back to MKO Boxing, aka MKO Pugilism, where we talk all things box. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow on TikTok, all that good stuff. So let's get into this one. News has come out. I think for me it would have been yesterday that I heard about this, which was this whole news of this party that took place at Daniel Dubois' house at his the big mansion in Essex, and apparently this happened allegedly on the same day of his fight with Alexander Usyk, and the person who organized this party at Daniel Dubois' place, the family home, was in fact his dad, Stan Dubois. So Stan Dubois, he organized this party. He had around 70 guests, around 70 people at Daniel Dubois' house. And there's footage of this flying all over the place. And, basically it's just like a bunch of guys and they're all making noise and saying, yeah, that's my champ, and you, blah, 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 blah. And they're just all these guys sort of drinking. They're outside the house, they're inside the house, they're in the sort of the gym in the big mansion there. And apparently, according to some sources, Daniel Dubois wasn't that comfortable in this environment, and Daniel Dubois didn't even really know a lot of these 70 guests that were in the house. And I can kind of believe that, because Daniel Dubois, he does come across as someone that's not really much of a personality. So I can't really imagine Daniel Dubois out there with like loads of friends and sort of being a popular guy, because he seems more of a sort of introverted guy, a quiet guy. He doesn't really say much before fights. He's just very, you can't really get many words out of him. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he didn't know sort of a lot of these guests there, and apparently he asked his dad to, whether he could sort of go for a drive and stuff, because he didn't know these people. He wanted to sort of get out of there and whatnot. And then apparently, according to Talk Sport, Simon Jordan, these guys used some designated cars that were actually meant to be sort of the escort cars to take Daniel Dubois, his dad, and Don Charles to the arena. But apparently, this entourage of these 70 guys, some of them used these designated cars to get into Wembley Arena. And according to what Simon Jordan was saying on Talksport, the dad, Stan Dubois, when they had their little party, they turned up to the stadium, around, I think they got in there around an hour and 20 minutes before fight time, which is, you compare that to Alexander Usyk, who got there about 3 hours before the fight was to take place or so. The Usyk got there about 6 or something. We saw that. But yeah, so they get there around an hour and 20 minutes left to go. And allegedly, Stan Dubois, Daniel Dubois' dad, said to the Wembley staff that if you don't let these guys in, and he wrote Daniel Dubois into it and said, Daniel, come back, come back. And he said, look, if you don't let my guys in, don't let these guys in, these 70 guys or whatever it was, you let them in, or my son's not fighting, we're not fighting. If you don't let these guys in, then Daniel's not going to fight and you'll have no main event, basically. So yeah, that's the sort of information there. Since that information came out, Don Charles also went on Talksport and he made some clarifications. According to Don Charles, he said that it wasn't a party, it was just a gathering. And he also said that before Daniel Dubois faced off against Anthony Joshua, he had the same sort of crowd, some of these same amount of guests, just like, let's say, half the people, like 30 something of these guys came over, and apparently they were G and Daniel Dubois up before the AJ fight, and it worked for them there. And so he said that this party thing, or this pre-fight gathering thing, is something that they've done before and it worked with AJ, so they were trying to replicate it. And according to Don Charles, he said, well, what the father was doing was trying to charge the atmosphere, and he was trying to, by getting 70 people instead of 35 people or whatever it was last time. Now you've got more energy, and Dubois can feed off the energy, and all this sort of stuff. And apparently it was to be for the betterment of Daniel Dubois. And yeah, for me personally, I think it's okay. It might have worked against Joshua, but to me personally, it does seem a little bit of a silly thing, to be honest with you, because you're dealing with a fight against the very best in the world. You're dealing with a fight against a guy that's beat you before. So the last thing you're going to need is a party and a load of hangers on, some of whom you don't know, and all that sort of stuff. I think it was, to me personally, that sort of thing is a bit silly, because when you're going in against Usyk, Usyk is a tactician. He's a very clever fighter, and he's a fighter that's beat you before. So I would think, if you're a fighter in that situation, if you're a coach, what you'd want is calm. You'd want calm, you'd want serenity, and you'd want to be at that arena early, and you'd want to be really, really focused on the game plan, and getting that in your head. The idea of turning up just an hour and something before the fight with a bunch of guys who are, from what it looks like, I don't think they're all Daniel Dubois' friends. A lot of them are just sort of hangers on who his dad might know, whatever. I think that's not going to be good for a guy like Daniel Dubois. Dubois seems like the type of guy that's, he's not a sort of complicated man. He's a man that you just sort of wind him up. You give him what instructions and he follows them. And I think the last thing he needed was this whole thing of all these distractions and 70 guys and hangers on and getting G'd up, because that's not his type of personality. He just doesn't seem like that sort of person who does this on a regular basis. So yeah, it seemed a bit silly. I mean, I know they've done it before, but yeah, to me, it just seems like a very, unwise thing to be doing, because with Joshua, it's different. You're dealing with a different type of opponent, a bit more straightforward. With Usyk, he's a southpaw, he's slick, he's beat you before, he's very tricky as a fighter. So if you're fighting him, you want to be as prepared as possible, as focused as possible. You don't want, one thing you don't want to be when you're fighting Usyk is distracted, because as I say, Joshua's a different fighter, more straightforward, more sort of technically what you're going to do against him is a bit simpler than what you're going to be dealing with when you fight Usyk. So that's my thoughts on it. I understand they've done it before, but I just thought it was a bit of a silly idea. A party on the day of and getting to the venue, late, and then, the drama of getting the friends in. I mean, to me, that's just ridiculous. And, that's utterly ridiculous, because once again, as fighters, and you're a human being, and again, even that whole idea, if that's true about making Daniel be there and making these statements, if I might, and some of these guys didn't even have tickets for the fight, so they just basically bulldozed their way and basically blackmailed Wembley to let them in the which is just ridiculous. And it's just another distraction that Daniel Dubois didn't need. Of course, I don't think he would have ever won that fight. I don't think Dubois would ever have won that fight at all. But I think he didn't give himself the best chance by having all this nonsense going on before. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Until next time, it's MKO Boxing, over and out.